Good morning. Welcome to the record keeping webinar for organic growers. My name is Megan Donovan and I work with CCOS. CCOS is an organic certifier, the largest in the United States. And I'm happy to have here today Ann Beyer from the National Center for Appropriate Technology. And before we begin the webinar, there's just a couple technical items I wanted to cover. And also say thank you to eHarvest Hub for sponsoring this event. eHarvest Hub provides free and user-friendly traceability software that gives growers the case-level traceability that their customers want. And so first of all, if you're having any difficulties, if you can't hear us right now or you can't see the PowerPoint, please call our office for support. The number is 831-423-2263, extension 10, and someone can help you get on or get your audio working. Also, there are a number of ways you can participate in the webinar today. You'll see on the right side of your screen there's a column. Up top there's a number of different icons. If you press on the participants icon, you can see who's participating in the webinar today. The chat function, you can chat with us or the rest of the participants. And also the question and answer function, you can send questions in to us. And we'll take breaks along the way through the webinar to respond to your questions. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ann Beyer. As I said before, Ann works with the National Center for Appropriate Technology, and she's also been an organic inspector with CCOS for the past 15 years. She's worked with growers both here in the United States and in Latin America. So welcome, Ann, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Megan. Good morning. Welcome, everyone, to this webinar on record-keeping systems for organic certification. Record keeping is necessary, beneficial to your business, and within reach of every organic producer. We'll be looking at the essential information required by organic regulations and the key components of record-keeping systems for organic certification. While today our examples will focus on organic crop production, most of the discussion and links provided will lead to record-keeping resources that are also relevant for organic livestock production and organic handling. This webinar will provide a framework to help you develop or improve your record-keeping system to meet organic regulations for certified organic crop production. We'll review the USDA National Organic Program regulations on record-keeping systems and organic crop production, show some examples and approaches to record-keeping needed for certification of crop production, and provide links to resources, templates, and programs to facilitate record-keeping. This slide sets the context of record-keeping for compliance with USDA's National Organic Program regulations by defining some of the common acronyms we'll be using in this presentation. The broadest level we'll discuss today is the United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA, and its Agricultural Marketing Service, or AMS. Within that is the National Organic Program, or NOP. The NOP organic regulations are found in the Federal Code of Regulations, or CFR, Part 205. To become certified organic, organic operations work with one of nearly 100 different USDA-accredited certifiers, one of which is California Certified Organic Farmers, or CCOF. Every certified operation must complete and maintain an organic production or handling systems plan, which we'll refer to as the OSP. The bubbles also included in this slide that we'll touch on from time to time are federal food safety regulations and CDFA, which is the California Department of Food and Agriculture, that has a few additional requirements beyond the NOP requirements. Organic regulations related to record-keeping systems. So regulations say that the OSP needs to include a description of the record-keeping system. NOP regulations require all certified operations to maintain a record-keeping system that fully discloses all activities and transactions and demonstrates compliance with the regulations in sufficient detail as to be readily understood and audited. Records may be in written, visual, or electronic form and need to be kept for 5 years after they're created. While record keeping may initially sound very dry, it's part of what defines organic farming. That's about both the stewardship of the land and natural resources and the transparency of methods that provide a foundation for consumer trust. Developing a record-keeping system and putting it into practice can help you meet compliance requirements for organic certification to NOP regulations and some international organic standards as applicable, and be prepared for your initial or annual inspections. Organic certification is not a one-time accomplishment, but a process of continually improving living systems. Your record-keeping system is a reflection of the good work you do every day, both in caring for the land and in the transparency for trust. A good record-keeping system also provides opportunities to support good business management by tracking and organizing relevant information about your production activities and ways that can help you develop your farm, comply with food safety requirements, facilitate preparation of your tax returns, and inform your future business decisions. And records can improve your farm management and production systems and enable you to recognize and measure your progress. I've heard many producers say that keeping records, which they had to do for organic certification, has helped them organize their observations, recognize patterns, solve problems more readily, and develop sound plans for their farm's future. So an effective record-keeping system is one that accurately describes and documents what is happening on your farm and how you run your business. Every organic farm needs a dedicated practice and procedures for keeping records that include a person, a time, a place, and a method for tracking each type of necessary information.
All right, thank you, Anne. So we're just going to take a brief break here to stop for questions. And we'd like to hear from you as to kind of how does your current system work and what improvements do you need? So if you could send us your comments through the question and answer function, we'll take a look at a couple of those. And I know some growers have commented that they're looking for ways to make their record-keeping system easier. So maybe we could start commenting on that, and then we'll take comments from the audience.
Well, I hope that some of the examples I'll show today are things that you can see as being possibly useful for your operation. There are a number of different forms and templates and programs, and most people use some kind of combination of folders of paper, of electronic communications and spreadsheets, some computer programs or internet cloud-based systems, and just handwritten things that happen in the field along the way that often get entered into the computer so that they're easier to organize and track later. But we'll provide some specific examples.
Great. And let's see if there's any questions from the audience. All right, I think we'll continue on.
Okay. So this slide shows a summary of some of the main organic crop production standards, which you may all be very familiar with. Land use history, transition, and buffer zones include prevention of contamination from prohibited materials used on neighboring lands. That enters into the conversation here, but it also runs through conversations about irrigation, water, and management of materials, both used in the field, post-harvest handling, storage, and transport. Wherever materials may be encountered whose use is either prohibited in organic or restricted or annotated for organic production. We'll discuss each of the next several in some detail as we go along, including soil fertility, seed and planting stock, crop rotation, pest management, and especially Audit Trail and labeling. Another set of part of the regulation that's important to be familiar with is the national list of materials that are allowed in organic production. So if we look at the big picture here, 3 main areas of crop production record keeping include inputs that come onto the farm, activities that happen on the farm, and products that leave the farm. We'll look at those in a little more detail here. The input activity materials, those need clear documentation of purchase or acquisition, usually a receipt or invoice or a delivery tag from the business or individual from whom you receive the input, which clearly shows the identity of that input and compliance of each material, whether it's a seed, a soil amendment, or a pest management material. Inputs may also include materials used for cleaning or sanitation, for example, for tool storage or through wash water. In the green circle, we see what happens on the farm. Once a year, the organic inspector can observe a snapshot of what happens on your farm on a given day. It's your records. The records of your practices show what happens the rest of the time. Those are useful for you as well as for inspection. While many farmers carry a great deal of information in their heads, tangible records that can be reviewed and copied are necessary to verify practices for compliance. Records are also useful when land changes hands or if the farmer is not available to ask. Those can include crop rotation, pest management, natural resource maintenance or improvement, and prevention of commingling or contamination. Then what leaves the farm would be documented by harvest records. If direct marketing is the primary approach to marketing, then harvest and sales records may fulfill the same function. Sales transactions are part of a complete audit trail. And if there's any product purchased for resale, that also needs to be documented with its organic status. The National Center for Appropriate Technology, or NCAT, is a nonprofit organization that's been supporting organic farmers with practical tools since 1976 through the ATTRA Sustainable Agriculture Program. In addition to providing technical assistance with production and pest management, we help farmers navigate the certification process and develop effective record-keeping systems. Information resources on the NCAT ATTRA website are available to anyone with internet access and include over 400 publications, dozens of videos, online tutorial courses, and 12 searchable databases. These cover crop and livestock production and pest management, marketing, and business management. 3 publications listed here at the bottom of the screen may be useful, especially to producers who are new to organic certification. Organic certification process, also preparing for an organic inspection, steps and checklists, and organic standards for crop production, excerpts of USDA's National Organic Program regulations. There really is no substitute for reading the regulations themselves. This set of excerpts focuses on the sections relevant to crop production. NCAT ATTRA has similar sets for livestock producers and for handlers. Farmers and ranchers who are located in the United States may also seek assistance with specific questions through ATTRA's Sustainable Agriculture Program toll-free hotline or through the Ask an Expert email service. Documentation forms for crop and livestock producers. This publication, available both in the NOP Program Handbook, Section H, and on the NCAT ATTRA website, describes the 3 main components of record-keeping systems for organic certification. They are your organic system plan, the documents, and records, and I'll describe each of these as is relevant. The organic system plan. An important step the producer takes in seeking organic certification is to submit to one's chosen certifier an application, an organic system plan, or OSP. The OSP includes a description of the operation's practices and procedures, including their frequency, a list of each input substance, its composition, source, and the reason for its use, monitoring practices and procedures to verify that your plan works, that it's effectively implemented, your plans for preventing commingling and contamination, and your record-keeping system. The OSP is the foundation of your record-keeping system. It's a living document that must provide an accurate description of your current production and handling practices. Every producer needs to review and update his or her OSP at least annually, or when materials or practices change. After the certifier reviews the OSP and assesses the potential for an operation to comply with organic regulations, they send an inspector to do a site visit to verify that practices are compliant with the NOP regulations and are carried out as described in the OSP, both in the field and in record keeping. The certifier then reviews the inspection report and makes a determination regarding compliance and certification of the operation. You may be very familiar with that process. Documents show transactions between one business and another, or transfer of ownership of inputs and farm products. Documents that accompany input materials entering the farm may include invoices, purchase receipts, weigh tags, or delivery tags. These may include seed and planting stock, soil amendments, lime and gypsum, mulch, blended and liquid fertilizers, foliar sprays, compost, and manure, pest management materials. And documents also accompany products leaving the farm. They should be able to be tracked from their field of origin through harvest and sales records. They may include sales invoices or receipts, delivery or receiving tags, purchase orders, contracts, sales journals, or farmers market load lists, depending on your approach to marketing. Storage affidavits and clean transport records may be documents that are relevant when storage facilities or vehicles that are not dedicated to organic are used. Shipping records may include scale tickets, weigh tags, bills of lading, and your audit trail documents need to show the quantity of each type of product grown, harvested, and sold. Records kept by the producer or his or her employees capture information that is not included in the documents we just discussed, but show on-farm activities. They create the means to trace an organic product from its seed or planting stock, fertility and pest management, land on which it was grown, crop rotation, and field management through harvest and post-harvest handling, storage, transportation, and the sale to the final consumer. Inspectors verify the sufficiency of this continuous audit trail at each annual inspection. It can be helpful to look at record-keeping forms in order to find or create those that work best for you. Several examples are found in the NOP program handbook, Section H, the NCAT ATTRA publication documentation forms for crop and livestock production, which has a lot of different examples for tracking nearly everything that we just talked about. And also, the farmers are free to use these templates as is, or adapt them for your own use, or simply use them to glean ideas to develop your own forms and track essential information for your farm. Many certifiers have templates for record keeping. Check their website or ask. CCOF has developed a collection of sample forms and worksheets to maintain compliance with organic standards, available on their website. These are currently available in PDF and Word format, some of the examples of which we'll see later in this presentation. This collection can be downloaded as a support package in English or in Spanish. And open source, editable, fillable, cloud-based templates are anticipated soon. Watch for those. Records are not just about paper anymore, although most farms still work with a good deal of it. The NOP and certifiers and producers can all be creative in developing new formats for documenting essential information. Photographs and electronic communications are fair game, as well as computer and cloud-based systems. As you design your record-keeping system, you can review what is available and select the tools that work best for your operation. I'll describe a few programs now, and of course I need to provide the disclaimer that Describing any of these programs does not constitute their endorsement, nor does the absence of many others imply anything about their potential quality. CogPro is a subscription-based online database designed for farmers, by a farmer, to capture and organize information needed to track crop and livestock production for NOP organic certification and GAP food safety inspections. And it's a program that can switch between English and Spanish. This service promises a database for farmer records that's private, no sponsors, no ads, and user information not shared or sold. You can log in as a guest at cogpro.com and try it out and test its claims that it's easy to use and comprehensive. Some other programs I came across are Farm at Hand that says it is and will be free to farmers. There are many other record-keeping systems and software programs available for all kinds of farms, not just organic. CSAware, Farmigo, FarmLog, FinPack, AgSquared. There are quite a few possible options with many different strengths. While financial records are relevant to organic farm inspection with respect to sales records and gross organic sales to calculate fees, they are very important for overall farm management. QuickBooks is a commercial financial program that I've seen many farmers use. There are also a number of free spreadsheets, mostly Excel, available from university sources. And some of these include the University of Missouri, Wisconsin, California has some, the Vermont Farm Viability Project. I've drafted a beginning farmer resource list with annotations to describe each of these programs if anyone is interested. A place for everything, and everything in its place. Although I first heard this from my grandmother, I'm sure she was not the only one to emphasize the importance of designating a place to organize important things. As the NOP definition suggests, the form of records may be visual or written, paper or electronic. The NOP does not specify how or where you keep records, just that you do so in a way that fully discloses all activities and transactions. Insufficient detail is to be readily understood and audited and available for review and copying. Most people use a combination of containers to organize three main components of a record-keeping system. Their OSP, of course, is one that describes their operation. Most farmers I see have a folder or a filing cabinet or some kind of container to hold and to organize all the paper documents that come into the farm and leave it, and farm records. I've seen successful systems that use a spiral-bound notebook or a graph paper and a pencil. I've also seen spreadsheets or software programs on a computer, tablet, or smartphone, documents stored in a filing cabinet with hanging files and folders, or portable totes or accordion files, and sets of labeled envelopes. Whatever containers you use, each component of your record-keeping system needs to be paired with a responsible person, a time, and a place where information is gathered and maintained. The closer to where it happens, the better. The containers, or forms and templates and methods, are up to you, as long as your system works for you and includes the information required by organic regulations.
Great, thanks, Anne. And we're going to take another break again for questions. And we'd love to hear from the audience what record-keeping systems and containers do you currently use. And please send it in through the chat function or the question and answer function. So while we're waiting for people to write in, and please write in, we'd love to hear from you. Some people have commented on, how can I use an iPad or an iPhone for record-keeping purposes on the farm? Or are there software that can be used for that?
Yes. All of them can be useful. Many have apps, and many people create their own kinds of systems that work for them.
Great. So we heard back from Natalie, and she says that their current record-keeping system they use is a binder. Have any comments on that, Anne?
Sure. A binder can hold things and keep them from blowing away in the wind, which is important in some areas. And there may also be some, it's great to have them in one place. And there may be some things that also, a binder sort of implies paper and means you might be printing out a few things that come in different forms, which if it works for you, it works for certification.
Great. We just had a question come in that says, do you have any recommendations to help streamline record keeping for complicated operations? This person's operation has over 100 varieties of vegetables.
Yeah. I think it's worth looking at some of those spreadsheets that are available for free from universities. And what I like about them is they combine information about production along with tracking financial information. I think that the little bit that I've worked with them, I think it takes just a little bit of time to set them up and some basic computer literacy knowledge about how to use Excel. But it's set up in a pretty reasonable way that I think may be worth taking a look. I played around with the one from Missouri that I found fairly useful. And there's one of those systems is particularly designed for highly diversified operations where you can put in a whole bunch of different crops. Some people also use QuickBooks and know how to set that up to divide things up and track things. And then the setup may be worth paying a professional bookkeeper to help you figure out the right categories of things to put things in. Because once it's set up in a really well-organized fashion, hopefully it will enable you to pull up the reports you want. Like if you want to know how much money and how much volume of parsnips or strawberries or whatever you grow you sold in the last season. One farmer that I saw a few years ago had a very small acreage, and he figured out how much revenue he got from each crop basically per square foot. And even though he could grow melons really well, he stopped growing melons because he could, he figured out he could, the land area was more important for the greens or for some other crop that required less space.
Great, thanks. So we have some more comments of containers that people are using, including spreadsheets, Google Docs, binders, Farmingo, an ET fastener folder with 3 dividers. And we also got another question as to how is the best way to file your bill landings in one file or by the buyer or transporter?
From my perspective as an inspector, any way that you organize them is a right way. If you can find it, it's good. It works.
Okay.
Yeah. Some people organize by date, some people by supplier. It's all good.
Great. Thank you. All right. I think we'll continue on to the next section of the webinar.
Okay. Land requirements. Many of you may be familiar with this already. But before your operation can be certified or new land added to it, land use history requirements must be part of your organic system plan and documented with appropriate attachments. This often involves a combination of documents. If you're in California, that would be county letters regarding materials that reference pesticide use reports. This reporting is mandatory in California. In other places, or here, we may rely on former land manager records or an affidavit describing materials and practices. And there are templates for such a form included in the resources we mentioned earlier. There may be an organic certificate if the previous farmer was certified, but that's often combined as needed to cover any gaps in dates with current and ongoing management records. In terms of soil and fertility management, organic regulations require a crop rotation, protection of the soil from erosion, and management practices to maintain or improve soil quality and organic matter. There's a lot of latitude in the methods, and much is left to the discretion of each farmer and certifier. Your OSP must describe how you are improving soil and how you monitor and measure that improvement. Documents from other businesses, such as laboratory reports, are relevant when soil, tissue, and water samples are taken. Comparing current results to prior year's reports can show improvements. For example, I recently inspected a farmer whose soil tests show measurable increases in soil organic matter content over the past 5 years. Soil tests are also needed to document specific micronutrient deficiencies if micronutrient fertilizers are applied. Records are important. Records of farming activities need to reflect how fields are managed and observations made. Improvements may be reflected in a number of ways, including crop yields, and photographs can serve as a tangible measure of progress, showing crop vigor or how prior problems have been resolved, such as erosion issues. Rotation records. As an organic inspector, I often hear farmers say that they just know what was planted in each field each year. While it is true that farmers have amazing minds, the farmer's memory is not a record that can be made, quote, available for inspection and copying, as organic regulations require. There are several possible ways to track crop rotation over multiple years, and those include planting records that include field and crop locations. After documentation forms, pages 13 and 14 provide sample planting records and crop rotation records, and C2F makes similar template forms available. A series of field maps with crops grown at each location provide an accurate record of what is grown at each location and can be used for long-term rotation planning. This week I visited a farmer who has maps going back several years and going forward 2 years ahead. There are some applications that can help you create maps, and then you could change just crops and have a series of maps. So this slide shows both a hand-drawn map that basically has all the essential information, the location, the cardinal directions, the date, the crops, and then the computer app generated the one on the lower right, and you can save maps for each year. These are useful also when organic land changes hands. You may know that it was organic, but you may not know what crop was there before. So these are both ways to fulfill the organic requirement to keep a record of rotation among different plant families and cover crops, or alley crops and field borders and perennial systems. Seed and planting stock compliance is part of the organic regulation that demands attention to detail. The NOP Draft Guidance 5029 describes what record keeping needs to look like. So the documents need to include receipts for purchase of organic seed and planting stock. And in the case of sprout growers, there's no exception for buying anything other than certified organic seed. But for most farmers, we're going to also be looking at commercial availability in the form, quantity, quality, and specific agronomic characteristics. A farm that's able to source all organic seed and planting stock, though rare, demonstrates the utmost compliance with the regulations and reflects a commitment to thoroughly organic systems. With respect to annual seedlings, these need to be organically grown. So check to be sure that your seed procurement practices match your description in your OSP, and that any receipts or purchase documents of organic annual seedlings or transplants include the organically grown status, certified organic by the certifier name, and if they're produced in California, documents showing transfer of ownership use the producer's CDFA organic registration number, which is required here. I recently saw some purchase of organic seedlings that didn't include the organic marking, and it took a great deal of time to call the transplant producer and track down the lot number, and we eventually figured out that yes, indeed, they were organic. But the best time to figure out, to verify that the information that you need on your document is at the moment of receiving that document. You can have it corrected promptly. You avoid a lot of time and question about the organic certification of your material. If any seeds, planting stock, or annual transplants are produced on the farm, whether in greenhouses or in the field, records of their production practices need to be kept, just as they do for any crop grown, to track crop varieties, input materials, harvest quantities, and storage. ATTRA has a record-keeping form specifically designed to track on-farm production of seed and planting stock. This slide shows CCUF's seed and planting stock record, which, when complete, shows details about the source and location of all seeds and planting stock. If any non-organic seed is used, the producer, to show compliance with materials used, must follow their OSP and, as required in the guidance document 5029, make progress in obtaining proportionally more organic stock compared to previous years. The record-keeping requirements for any non-organic seed or planting stock purchase needs to include a confirmation that any crops that are potentially genetically modified, that your varieties are non-GMO. In your OSP, you can list the quantities in a form, such as pelleted seed, and qualities and characteristics needed, such as disease resistance, germination rate, specific market varieties for flavor and appearance. And you can always ask of anything that you're buying non-organically, are these available in any equivalent organic variety? Maintaining records or documentation of search and unavailability of organic seed is required from at least 3 such sources. At the bottom of this slide, I show 3 letters, but this is just one of several valid ways to document commercial non-availability of an organic and needed organic variety. NOP guidance states that records may include, but are not limited to, letters, faxes, email correspondence, and phone logs from seed suppliers and companies, seed catalogs, receipts, receiving documents, invoices, and inventory control documents. And should also maintain a list of seed and planting stock resources sources that normally supply organic seed and planting stock. Now, there are several different useful sources of lists of companies that sell organic seed. You can find them in the NCAT directory of organic seed sources, the Organic Seed Finder, the links are on the screen, Canadian Organic Growers, and it's not on this slide, the CCUF support package for organic crop producers includes a quite extensive list of companies that produce organic seed. Inputs. All inputs you plan to use must be listed in your OSP with their manufacturer, source, and brand name and formulation if that's applicable. Sources of manure must be documented, and production methods for compost also included. With respect to manure, you also want to check your source and make sure that there aren't any prohibited materials such as hydrogen lime added to that. So to verify that your input purchase documents or acquisition receipts are complete, you can check if they show the date of transaction, the buyer and the seller, the product name and formulation, and it's the manufacturer is distinct from the distributor or the seller. Sometimes a person will list the store from which they bought it rather than the actual manufacturer of the product. And it's the manufacturer that allows for positive identification of materials, and their allowability can then be confirmed. And of course, your documents should show the quantity of input material that you purchase. Unfortunately, this sometimes takes some effort, and it's part of a process of education for businesses, as I've heard that it took some effort for a producer to get the brand name of the compost and the type of gypsum that was combined with it. But again, at the moment that you get this receipt, look at it and say, is this complete? Does this show what I need to have for my organic inspection that positively identifies every material that I've applied to my farm? So one thing is purchase of inputs. Another is their application on the farm. And there are many creative ways to document this. Here are a couple of examples of forms of input use and material application records. So you can ask yourself, do my application records show the necessary information, including the identity of the material, the location where they are applied, and the date and rate that it was applied? And do I have the corresponding documentation to show the source of each input? And depending on your operation, some of you may have a bag of fertilizer that you use over a long period of time, in which case this kind of record would be very useful. Mid to larger sized operations may order a supply of a certain input, and their record might consist of simply writing the date and field on the document, the purchase document. There are many different ways to do it as long as you can track what comes into each field and how much of it at what time. Records for manure and compost production. Here are a couple of examples. The regulations 205.203 specify that raw or uncomposted manure must be incorporated into the soil at least 90 or 120 days before harvest of a crop intended for human consumption. So 90 or 120 depends on whether or not the edible portion touches the soil. So the forms shown here can help you track the date of application and the harvest date to show that the interval meets NOP requirements. The lower one shows compost production, what goes into the compost, how it's arranged, and the temperatures and turning. As you know, pests come in all shapes, colors, sizes, and species. Weeds and insects, mites, diseases, bacteria, virus, invertebrates. And the NOP describes the regulations emphasize cultural practices that enhance crop health. Those include soil preparation, crop rotation, crop and variety selection for resistance and vigor, increases in soil organic matter, nutrient management, water management, which can be critical for disease management, developing habitat for natural enemies of pests, biological control, mechanical and physical controls, and application of a pest management material is allowed under NOP regulations only when your OSP includes a description of preventative practices that you use and a list of each material used or planned for use, and your pest monitoring methods and their frequency. Your documents then need to show purchase of materials allowed under NOP regulations, and your records should include monitoring that indicates when preventative practices are insufficient and application of an allowed pesticide material is warranted. NCAT ATTRA has a new ecological pest management tutorial on our website that may be of further help in identifying and managing pests using preventative practices such as much as possible. One of the databases, the Biorationals Ecological Pest Management Database, provides a list of materials with the goal of identifying those that are most effective and support ecological balance, as well as providing references to preventative practices for many pests. According to USDA definition, an organic production system is managed to respond to site-specific conditions by integrating cultural, biological, and mechanical practices that foster cycling of resources, promote ecological balance, and conserve biodiversity. The organic production practices must maintain or improve the natural resources of the operation, its physical and hydrological, biological features, including soil and water quality, wetlands, woodlands, and wildlife.
Great, thank you very much. And again, we'd love to hear from the audience about what practices your farm does to contribute to the natural resources goals of the NOP? So what are you doing to fulfill that requirement? And also, we got a question as to how to record farming activities. So, you know, if you're out in the field, what are some good ways to record farming activities?
I think, you know, recording information where as close as possible to where it happens is a great idea. So carrying some kind of pocket notebook or something in your truck, if that's the way you farm. There are a number of different formats in the ATTRA and the CCUF sets of materials that can help provide a place to organize the information. I think the most important thing is to capture it and then make sure that it's organized in a way that both meets the requirements but is also useful to you. I think the format can be very simple. I've seen, you know, a calendar with squares that are big enough to make some notes can be a very useful form. Just a notebook would be sufficient. And recently I saw a farmer who had a book that had a whole page for each day, and that provided space for making notes about how things were doing in the field, what fertilizers or pest control materials were used, and then the harvest that happened each day from each field and the quantities.
Thanks. And we also just got a question. Can you talk about requirements in record keeping for buffered zones? What to look out for, if not all on the property that is to become certified?
Yeah. So the regulations specify that you need to have some kind of management practices or physical barriers to prevent contamination from a neighboring land use that uses materials that aren't allowed in organic production. And whether those are somebody else's, your neighbors, or your own, there needs to be some space, and depending on whether there's a prevailing wind or a slope, those barriers may need to be bigger or have additional barriers set in place. Unfortunately, I saw a farm that the neighbor's berm had washed out and a lot of water landed on the organic farm, and that's a very unfortunate situation. The more you can do to prevent that, the better. If in some circumstances, if there's not a wide area that you have to work with, where you might fill it with fence lines or hedgerows or farm roads, those are always nice to see because those provide a very tangible physical barrier. In some cases, farmers find it necessary to grow a crop in a zone, in a buffer zone that's right next to somebody else's property where they can't control what the other person is applying right up to the property line. If you grow crop that in that buffer zone, in some cases you'll need to document that you dispose of that in some way, either by selling it as non-organic or by documenting that you donated it or you haven't harvested it or that you've used it for household use. Somehow the harvest quantity and date needs to be documented so that you can show that it wasn't sold as organic if it was in that buffer zone.
So another question that came up is, do field transplants need to be steam cleaned when switching from conventional to organic planting?
Good question. I would ask your certifier. I think and think about your own common sense. Is there a risk that there may be some prohibited materials, either fertilizer materials or pesticide materials on that transplanter? Then steam cleaning would certainly be an appropriate way to clean that. The biggest concerns would be any equipment that applies pesticides or uses a seeder that plants treated seed. Those are clearly prohibited materials that could contaminate and are organic. seed if it weren't cleaned in between. Nice if there can be dedicated equipment to organic, but I know that's not always possible. And if there's a contract operation that is used, many times they will have a standard operating procedure that does include a seam cleaning or adequate wash.
And then finally, we've gotten a comment wanting to hear about their compost available that is made from all GMO inputs that is OMRI, because the organic standard of production is supplied.
I'm not sure how to address that. I think that goes beyond the scope of what we can manage with record keeping today. But talk to your certifier about that.
All right, so continuing on.
Great. So Audit Trail certainly is one of the mainstays of organic farming. And you can assess your own audit trail and make sure that you can track each crop and the quantities from the beginning to the end. You can show that the product source and production methods are traceable from seed to final sale. And that you can track that from harvest, transport, storage, and all the way to the release of custody of any agricultural product that you are labeling as organic. If you are producing in California, CDFA requires that documents showing transfer of ownership must include the producer's CDFA organic registration number. Post-harvest handling is relevant in some operations, and the practices must be described in the producer's OSP. If any materials are used, they must be listed with their intended use in your OSP with the product brand name and manufacturer. This example shows a log of chlorine level monitored in the wash water. It's important to note that the test strips measure in the proper range to verify the required level of chlorine that's less than 4 parts per million. And just there are many other materials allowed for use as sanitizers under NOP regulations. You can look in the national list that may be both effective and more environmentally benign than chlorine. That is our option. Labeling is certainly part of your record-keeping system and must be described in your OSP. Labeling includes all types of box or bag labels, clamshells, twist ties, rubber bands, signs at farmers market or farm stands, etc. And CCOF has a guide on their website that will guide you through the specifics of label design. The producer should submit to their certifier a full color label for review and approval before printing. It can save a lot of money if there's some kind of error by catching it before printing. But briefly, the statement certified organic by the certifier's name should be placed directly below the farm name and address. And use of the certifier and USDA seals are optional. If both are used, the certifier seal must not be larger than the USDA seal. And the USDA seal must appear either in black and white or in its original colors. No variations allowed. Again, a little more detail on audit trails and product tracking. Product may be tracked through detailed harvest and sales records for any scale of operation. Some may use a farmer's market load list for direct marketing pick lists, sales summaries, CSA, sales records, and delivery tags or other invoices to restaurants or wholesale markets. Traceback is also needed for your food safety plan and certification if you are certified. So your efforts to maintain a clear audit trail system will fulfill two goals at the same time. Farmers should provide a sample set of audit trail documents for each different type of farm sales to show that how the organic audit trail or traceback system works for each market type. Check that your harvest and sales records together comprise an adequate audit trail, such that production quantities of any organic product can be verified for any given time period. Check to see, do your harvest and sales records documents clearly show the date, the origin of the product, the field where it was grown, markings that show the organic status of the product, for example, organic or certified organic by the certifier name, production quality, quantity or volume, and the product destination to whom it's sold. If produced in California, again, do all your documents showing transfer of ownership also include the CDFA organic registration number of the producer? This slide shows two examples of sample forms from the NOP and NCAT ATTRA. So to wrap things up, please note that none of the forms that we've shown in this presentation or that are provided in the links is specifically required. The information included in them is required. What's important for you as a producer is to know the essential information needed for each type of record. For some types of records, a sample form such as these may work just fine, but operations are unique and diverse such that use of a template may not be practical, and you will design your own record-keeping system as required by NOP regulations that is adapted to your own organic operation. Some certifiers prefer certain formats. Other entities, such as lenders and the IRS, require use of specific formats. If a specific form is required, use it. I'm sure that whatever effort you put into designing and using your record-keeping systems is a practice that will provide you with great rewards. For more information, please see the websites for the NOP, including the program handbook, with guidance on several different topics. The NCAT, ATTRA, the CSUF, and other certifiers' websites. If you have specific questions and you live in the United States, you may call NCAT ATTRA and be put in touch with one of several agriculture specialists. Thank you for your hard work and good efforts to farm organically.
Great. Thank you very much, Anne, for your presentation. We have a short time for a couple more questions, and one came in is how does labeling apply to farmers markets and CSAs, specifically if the CSA customers pick up from the farm stand, et cetera, and the products are not boxed for them to pick up?
A lot of direct marketing situations don't have labels per se. And that's fine as long as you have a record of what you produced and where it went. So a CSA record might include a list of your subscribers and posting your certificate on the farm. If you have a newsletter, make sure that you include any additional information if it's all from your farm, or if there's any exceptions to that. Obviously, you need to track if you purchase product for resale or include any variations. But there needs to be some way to verify a production, including quantities of each product in some fashion.
Great, thanks. And another question came in. What are the most commonly used, in your opinion, best software solutions for managing farm data?
That depends. I think people have such diverse familiarity with different kinds of systems. I've seen people maintain very effective records with a spiral notebook and a folder of documents of their purchase of their inputs. I've seen very smart people who have designed their own sophisticated computer systems. I've seen an operation that sold over $1 million worth of product keep very effective records on, literally on graph paper with a pencil. So, but you asked about software solutions. So I would look at some of those, both commercial products and some of the free Excel files on the university sites, and just look through them and try them for yourself. Try them out and see, how easy is this to use? Is it effective? Does it capture the information I need to capture? Does it work for me? And if it works for you and it captures the essential information, talk to other farmers too. I think people do this in a lot of different ways, and certainly there are some ways to make it easier. And I think it may be, did I mention already, it may be worthwhile to have somebody who's very experienced in it to help you with the initial setup of your system. You know, if somebody's really good with QuickBooks, they may be able to save you a lot of time by setting it up properly. If somebody's good with the Excel spreadsheets or with CogPro or with, you know, just try out all the different computer software systems available for a few minutes, and the time that you invest in trying them out may pay off well. Find one that works for you.
Great. Well, thank you very much again, Anne, for your presentation. And we are going to switch presenters now. I wanted to introduce Jake of CCOF Certification Services. We've been going over a lot of different examples of ways to keep records in this webinar, and Jake's going to introduce some new ones, or what's on the horizon.
Yeah, some changes. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. This is a really fun thing. And I have a word of advice. If you ever get in a situation where you might have a professional photo, have it done right away so it's the youngest possible version. Look at that. Wow. So you've seen a number of record-keeping options and tools here today, and a number of those are available from CCOF as just open documents that you can use as, you know, you see fit, how it fits your system. And we recently did a session on this at EcoFarm this last year, and one of CCOF members, Chris Hay at Say Hay Farms outside of Davis, gave us the idea to redevelop all of our sample documents as a set of Google Forms and Google templates. So what you will see in the next week or two is an announcement from CCOF that all of the documents that are available from us in terms of sample record-keeping forms will also be available as Google documents that you can download, that you can input information on using your phone or at your computer. They don't require special software. It's just internet-based, and we've developed them all. We're just figuring out how to link everybody to them, but they're actually secretly on Google right now. If you search for CCOF in the Google documents, the templates, and we're hopeful that that will create just another way that's a little bit easier and also make some of the record keeping, open up some mobile opportunities for those that would like to use them that way. So that's really exciting, and hopefully will be helpful. The other area of record keeping that is sometimes missed and is important for all of us in this kind of organic certification activity to keep in mind is that records don't necessarily have to mean paper. That's the assumption, but we increasingly are in a world where everybody has a camera in their pocket, and we would encourage folks to consider using their phones and other tools like that to take pictures within their operation, save them, email them to yourself. Those can be records. They're alternative record-keeping options, and the only way to keep records is not necessarily a document. The goal is to be able to have ways to demonstrate your activities in a way that's understandable under the standards. And so taking pictures of a harvest, taking pictures of a buffer harvest or of a practice or something like that, taking pictures of a seed bag, even taking pictures of receipts or other records are totally appropriate way to approach keeping records or keeping a demonstration of activities. We've even seen people do things like, write on a fence post. I personally did inspections with a gentleman who, would write on the fence post, and, it's not a piece of paper, but it's a thing you can look at, and, you're allowed to be creative, and pictures is one way to be creative. Other than that, I just really encourage everybody to, use systems that work for you, work with your inspectors. Your inspectors can learn to understand what you do that's unique, and as new tools become available, we're all going to kind of grow and evolve together with new systems, and I think this is getting easier and easier all the time, which is really kind of great.
All right, thank you very much, Jake. And I just wanted to open it up, and if anybody in the audience has questions, please send them in, and it'll take a couple minutes to answer them. We had one question come in. What does CCOF and other organic certifiers do with farm certification records? Is any of this information publicly accessible? And does it currently inform agricultural policy?
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, what is public with regards to certification is current certification status, overall acreage. That's the information that is basically public, and the information that's public described in our manual, but it's really just who is and is not certified and what for. Yeah, and what for, which crops, and so on. In terms of records of practices or activities, that is not at all public. I would just say that both in terms of the locations, the numbers, who is certified for what, the overall acreage of items that are certified, very much does go towards informing agricultural policy. And in some cases, we might look across our certification system, particularly in terms of perhaps inputs. If a particular material is used by many operations and that material is up for review, we might report or discuss at a policy level the aggregate information about how many operations may use a material, but specific information about practices is confidential. Basically, it's not disclosed.
Great, thank you. And are there any other questions out there? All right, looks like we're good. So thank you very much, Jake, for the exciting new frontier of record keeping. And again, thank you to Anne for your presentation and to all the participants who participated. So we just wanted to ask a couple things of you. After you finish the webinar, if you could please fill out the evaluation forms. It'll appear on the next window when you sign out. And also, if you're interested in attending any other CCOF education events, please check out our website. We have a bunch of stuff coming up. There's the Los Angeles Wholesale Market Tour on April 24th, a nitrogen budgeting workshop for growers in Spanish. It'll be translated into English on May 12th, and a number of organic certification field days in North Carolina, and also a Going Organic workshop in Kingsburg, California. So we hope to see you at some of those. And again, thank you for your participation. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me by phone or email. And also, I don't want to forget to mention that we will be sending out a video recording of this webinar so you can view it again. And also, after this, we're going to have a Going Organic addendum webinar. It'll be a quick half hour to kind of orient those who are yet to be certified as to what organic certification entails. So thank you very much, and have a good day if you're signing up, and if not, we'll see you at the addendum webinar.